Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Pretty Suited Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren A. And today I want to talk about a subject that's been heavy on my mind lately, partially just because I feel like I've always considered myself to be an old soul. So to anybody who considers themselves to be an old soul too, bring it on in. Because I got a bone to pick. I don't know about you guys, but I've always felt like I was born in the wrong era. I feel like my personality, how I carry myself, how I was raised, it made me feel like I was born in the wrong era. So when I grew up, I was definitely raised partially by my grandparents who always had us sitting down watching old shows like The Price is Right, Golden Girls, Matlock, all the things. If you're a millennial, you know. And it wasn't just on sick days too. Anytime you were over your grandparents' house, you were definitely watching their old shows. Same thing with music. My grandmother and my mother and my father had no problems turning on Luther Vandross, Marvin Gaye, Anita Baker, Jodeci, all the classics from the 70s all the way to the 90s. And so that was something that I feel like shaped me into the person that I am today. Well, this same thing can be said about a particular artist that I think was definitely born in the wrong era. And who I'm talking about is Ari Lennox. Ari Lennox is an artist that I don't feel like gets the recognition that she deserves. She's an artist I feel like is amongst the kind of new age R&B songstress like the Summer Walker, the SZAs, and the Jasmine Sullivans even. However, I feel like Ari Lennox is put in a particular box that her counterparts aren't necessarily put in. So, for example, when you look at the history and the success of people like Summer Walker or SZA, you see their vast ascendance into stardom. And a lot of that has to deal, I feel, with not only the music that they put out, but the camp that they're associated with. So with Summer Walker, she's associated with LVRN, which is, the Atlanta scene. That includes Justice, that includes Division, that includes a lot of artists that kind of like base their talents and bounce off of each other and have like a similar feel and vibe. And then she also had that backing from, her child's father, London on the Track. So she was able to really utilize the resources that she had to really amplify her success. Now you have SZA, who, while she is extremely talented and has been in the game for a very long time, she's a talented writer. And so she's been able to pen some major songs for artists, as well as the camp that she surrounded herself with was, of course, TDE, Kendrick Lamar, and that whole camp of Isaiah Rashad and Schoolboy Q. So she had that really solid backing by a solid group of guys who was able to push her name and her likeness to the forefront and made her a household name. So when we move on to Ari Lennox, who I said I think is in the same category, I would even throw her into this conversation, but her is a little bit different because she didn't necessarily have a huge male backing or a camp that she was associated with. But Ari Lennox is a little bit different, I feel, because yes, we have been in love with her since her smash first album, Shea Butter Baby, that came out in like 2019. When I first heard that, we were really getting ready to dip into the pandemic, and she carried the whole pandemic on her back for me. That album stayed on repeat. It was something like we never heard. Her voice was very soulful, almost remnant of something from the neo soul era, but she was modern and had like a modern feel, kind of like just that single young woman vibe and energy, like she was just getting her life together and just singing about it along the way. But that first album was literally an instant classic. I feel like I don't know too many women my age in my group that does not feel that way. And so she had that backing from J. Cole and his camp, which was Dreamville, and the many artists on that. However, throughout the years, Ari Lennox has made a tremendous effort to carve her own lane. Just because her sound and her tone, I feel like, was very different than her peers. However, the songs that came post COVID didn't necessarily hit the same way. So I was excited to see what this Vacancy album had to say and what it sounded like, especially since it's post COVID as well as post Dreamville. If you're not familiar, Ari Lennox parted ways with Dreamville because of maybe some creative differences. I don't think she felt like she fit in with the guys or maybe had as much push on her projects as she would like. So she ended up parting ways and now she's more of an independent artist. So this is her first attempt at a project after Dreamville. So she brought on some heavy hitters. If you're not familiar with Jermaine Dupri, the super producer, the musical genius, the innovator that he is, as well as Brian Michael Cox, who is pretty much the same, penned most of your favorite R&B songs. And produced most of your favorite R&B songs. So they came in and help her with this project, and you can hear their influence as soon as I put it on, because I like to do my test drives and make sure I can run errands to the album or the project. I turned on her album and I instantly thought that, okay, we're getting ready to get some Shea Butter Baby, because the first song sounded like you can literally place it on the end of Shea Butter Baby and it would have fit right in. So I was already excited to hear what was next because it kicked off just right. To me, I feel like this particular project had moments where I really got a chance to see her voice shine. But to me, Ari Lennox's voice doesn't necessarily translate on all of the songs that were written for her. It's the timeless tale of being right place, wrong time, right? And so, like me, who I feel like I was born in the wrong era, I really and truly wish that Ari Lennox was in the era of the neo soul early 2000s. I think she would have fit in perfectly with her tone. Same as Jasmine Sullivan. But the difference between, I feel like, Ari Lennox and Jasmine Sullivan is that Jasmine had songs that fit her voice a lot better, and it was able to transcend and not sound like it's supposed to be on urban radio only. You get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like Jasmine Sullivan's voice was able to translate to younger audiences, and she felt like an older cousin as opposed to an older auntie. And I'm not saying Ari Lennox sounds like an old auntie, but I just don't think the songs that she has been given post Shea Butter Baby really fits her tone to the point where it doesn't sound like it is too niche. And so it's hard. It's hard to feel like you aren't given the chance to showcase your talent in the best way possible because you don't have the resources in front of you. I'm pretty sure Ari Lennox felt that way about Dreamville. While it was a well-oiled machine, the primary focus was on one artist. So you may not have gotten the right budget, or you may not have gotten the right attention or looks. Especially since your voice is so unique, it may not have fit on most of the tracks. And so you don't feel like you have what you need. You see it right in front of you. It's very clear as day, but your ability to access it and use it is kind of gone. So that's really frustrating. It even got to the point where she even went on tour. I want to say it was like 2 years ago with Rod Wave, and that didn't make any sense. Like, I don't know who set that up, because we know Rod Wave to be somewhat of an emotional rapper. His audience is pretty much a young, like, 18 to 22, 24 type audience, maybe even younger, who's in their emo phase. And so for her to open up for him on his tour, I don't think those audiences matched. And so she didn't receive the love that she thought that she deserved. It was to the point where she had bottles thrown on her at the tour. So again, being such a unique talent and not feeling like you're placed in the right position to succeed is very frustrating. And that can translate over into even just a 9 to 5. I know oftentimes, we're pushed to get the degree, to, get the skill set and work hard in school and so on and so forth. And so you get this degree, right? You have the credentials, it's right there in your hand, but you're not provided the opportunity to showcase your skills in the career field that you have studied for. So now you end up going into over here in a separate field, whether it's accounting or hospitality or restaurants, I don't know. But it's not what your degree said that you're qualified in. So you are going into these other areas trying to make a living, but you're not utilizing your skill set. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. And it's a very frustrating process because you know what you're capable of. You know what you were placed here to do. You know you have a purpose. You just need the tools and the resources to get there. And so for Ari, I feel bad because I understand the challenges that she's put up against, because you have extreme talent, and then you also have peers surrounding you that you may even feel like you're more talented than. I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but I'm just saying she has a lot more talent than a lot of the people that are out here now. And so, but unfortunately, they have better looks, or maybe even a better team, or maybe even just more money to be able to push their product out there. And then you have a woman who fortunately was able to separate from something that she thought was holding her back, but she still doesn't have what she needs to push forward. I don't know. Tell me what you think. I always feel like Ari sounds a little bit like a mixture between a Lettucey and a Jasmine Sullivan, but then like a sprinkle of like Vivian Green or something. Like now, if you definitely know who I'm talking about if you was a neo soul listener in the 2000s. But I just want to hear her voice on a fine-tuned song that doesn't sound like it's supposed to be on the B-side of a 70s album. You see what I'm saying? And so I don't know. I think that whoever's writing her stuff is trying to respect her voice and respect her tone and make it sound like, something from the past. However, I think it's a way that you could do it to where it still sounds modern and it still is true to who she is. So what do you do? What do you do in the moments where you feel like your talent is overlooked? Do you go along with the status quo, or do you actually fight to make sure that your talent and your voice is heard? I don't know. That's a difficult question, especially when you've been fighting for so long. Sometimes people just get really tired of the constant, boxing in, or the constant ridicule, or just even when she speaks out against her experiences being a dark skinned woman, she receives backlash, or just gaslighting that's not her experience. And so I think over the years, she's felt kind of beat down by the industry to where she's not fighting as much. But it's up to her and her team to find those writers and those producers that really can transform her image to be, I feel, more relatable, but yet true to who she is. I can imagine how Ari Lennox feels like she would have been more successful if she came out in a different time. But is there really a such thing as wrong timing? I'm a person of purpose, and I'm a person of fate, and I'm a spiritual person. So I don't necessarily think that there is a such thing as wrong time. I think that we can deviate from our paths just because we have choice, and that, we can be influenced by things. And so we may end up back on the path, but we might end up taking the long way because of how we deviated. But I'm a person who thinks that what's meant for you is for you. And so if it's happening for you, that means that it was meant to happen this way. And so who's to say that she was, brought up in the wrong time? But one thing I will say about Ari is that she stays true to who she is regardless. And I think that's commendable, especially in an era where everybody wants you to look a certain way, wants you to get enhancements, wants you to lighten your skin, wants you to change your hair tone. She still pretty much stays true to Ari Lennox, and that looks like a natural, beautiful black woman. And so I appreciate her for being, different in this time where everybody's looking the same. So I think that's a lesson within itself, regardless if people may not understand you and your talent or your gifts or your vision, doesn't mean you have to acquiesce to it. It doesn't mean you have to change who you are just to fit in. You just have to be able to find the right tools and the right team and the right resources to help amplify who you are, amplify your natural gifts, and amplify your talent. But just changing who you are just for the sake of, that's never a good thing, because then, like I said in the last episode, who are you? Are you just going to change every time the tide changes? No. I think that consistency is key, and it actually equates to longevity too. Because when you just moving and shaking to whatever is new and whatever's out there, then I think you're going to end up falling through the cracks because you're not going to really have your own audience. And so I'm not saying that Ari Lennox should change who she is. I just think she just needs the right people around her. And the other lesson is that if you feel that you're a part of a team, a family, a job, or anything that's surrounding you, you should have enough confidence within yourself and enough self-awareness and self-love to be able to detach yourself from that. It may not even be hard feelings. It may just be, I've outgrown this, or this is limiting my ability. And so what do you do about that? You may have to remove yourself from that in order for you to grow. And so I think that's a big testament to any person, because that could be scary, especially when that thing helped develop you. You may feel like you have some kind of loyalty or tie to it, and you don't. And hopefully the two parties can be mature enough to say, hey, this may be not working out for you anymore, or you may need a different set of resources that we can't offer. And hopefully you could part ways amicably. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. But I think in this situation, she did what was best for her, and separated from a pretty big team and a pretty big name. So shout out to her for doing that. So anyways, I feel you, Ari. I get it. We are different kind of women who just want to be able to love and be loved and show love, right? Let me know where I can sign up for the coffee house and the poetry nights, okay? Because that's where I want to be at. Anyway, check that out. That is Vacancy by Ari Lennox. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, you cannot manifest the life you feel like you don't deserve. So create the life that you want and look to the sky for grace. Bye-bye. For all that life has in store, health,